The Radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody. Welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Saturday, December 6th. I hope everybody is having a good weekend, had a good week, and enjoying your time off. All right, today we're going to talk about the crisis of meaning that exists out there. We're told that exists out there. No, I think it does exist out there. We'll talk about what it means and where it comes from and kind of what the solutions are to it. And then we're going to do some reviews. We've got a couple of, we got one TV episode and a couple of there's a kind of a documentary type movie and a couple of monologues from Andor that are also included. So you've got that to look forward to. And let me just pull something up here. No, not that. Not that. Not that. Not that. Okay, that'll have to adjust in a minute. All right, let's get started. Remember, you can ask questions about anything. It doesn't have to be about the topic of the show, so feel free to ask about anything. And come on, update. This thing will not update. It's not updating. All right, it will in a minute. You can ask about anything. Super chat is available. What do you call it? Stickers available. Support the show. All of that good stuff. Let's jump into the crisis of meaning. What is the crisis of meaning? I mean, it's basically this notion that people out there in the world feel that there's no meaning to their lives. In other words, a certain directionless. They feel hollow. They might be able to, they might have access to, and they might have kind of the material needs that they want. They might even make good money and have a nice house and have stuff. But in spite of that, what's the point of it? What's the point of life? What's the meaning of life? They're generally unhappy. They go through midlife crises, or really most of the people right now, I think, that where this crisis of meaning is applying, most of these people are young. They're young, and their life has been fairly comfortable, and they're educated, and they might even have good jobs, and some of them have made a lot of money. I know people in Silicon Valley who go out there and they make a lot of money, very young, and then it's like, yeah, but what's it all for? What's the purpose of life? What am I going to do with all this? And they're lost. They drift, or young people who they don't like work for as a consequence, I think, of our educational system. They haven't found anything they really like. They just want to drift. They want to be in there, in the basement playing video games. I got blamed for hating video games for saying this, but this is not anything about video games. This is to do with the people. And a lot of it has to do with, well, what's the point? I go to work, I make money. What's the point? I think, part of it is, and it seems, when you look, so what happens is they start looking for causes. They start looking for places where they can find meaning, and we'll get to that. And it does seem to me that this is striking men much more than it is women. It's much more prevalent, it seems, that it's much more prevalent among young men than among young women. And you can see that there are all these movements that claim to provide meaning, whether it's whether it's religion or whether it's nationalism or any of these things, it primarily, or whether it's Jordan Peterson, who identified this crisis of meaning early on, they're almost predominant. They're predominantly male. They're predominantly men, and they are seeking meaning, purpose. They don't know what life is about. It is interesting that it's striking men more than women. I think we'll get to why I think that is. You probably heard me talk about this before, but there's been a real shift that men have not adjusted to, and that women are far more comfortable with. So what's going on, and what's the cause of this crisis of meaning, and is it new? Is it happening new? I mean, it's not new, because Nietzsche talks about this in the 19th century, right? I mean, he talks about the crisis of meaning, and for Nietzsche, and I think for a lot of people, for Jordan Peterson, for example, much of the crisis of meaning has to do with the loss. And the loss that they identify is a loss of religion. So Nietzsche says, God is dead. Humanity, in a sense, killed him. And now what? Without God, what is the purpose of life? Without God, what is the meaning of life? How do we find it? And how can there be one if the world is just guided by, I don't know, by physical characteristics, by inertia, by nature? If there's no other life, if there's not a kind of an eternal afterlife that one achieves, if one lives a certain life, then what is the meaning? And I think Jordan Peterson agrees with him. I mean, Jordan Peterson basically says that the reason for the particular crisis of meaning we're living in right now among men is it's multidimensional. But one of the causes is the loss of religion, the loss of this tradition, the loss of these guiding principles that told us exactly what we're supposed to do and what we're supposed to live for, from some kind of external authority, whether it be the authority of family, whether it be the authority of God, whether it be the authority of other institutions. We've lost that authority, and therefore, men have lost meaning, and part of it is it manifests in aimlessness and unwillingness to take responsibility over their own lives and then responsibility over the lives of others. For Jordan Peterson, responsibility over the lives of others is a crucial element in attaining meaning. But responsibility for their own lives. And this is the thing about make your bed and stand up straight and be a man, right? It's take responsibility for your own life. But they've lost all this because this external force, religion, tradition, have basically become irrelevant in the modern world. And once they become irrelevant in the modern world, we're aimless. We don't know where to search. And Jordan tells us, look out there for meaning. Find a cause. Find something you can be responsible for. Find something that you, outside of you, that you can take responsibility for and make that, in a sense, your meaning. But it has to be outside of you. And to find it, you have to connect with, often with a tradition, with some kind of dogma, with a God, with a religious authority. Now, I think this whole explanation is fundamentally false. And I think it's false because I think it's ridiculous to assume, it's ridiculous to hold that religion provides you with meaning, or that tradition provides you with meaning, or that it ever provided most people with meaning. I mean, the reality is that in the pre-industrial age, in the pre-industrial revolution age, 90% of the population were barely surviving. They had no conception of thinking about meaning. And the people who considered meaning, found it in the pursuit of their own values, found it in the pursuit of their own life. The people who followed religious dogma and believed that they would find meaning in religious dogma were just unhappy, miserable people. There was no meaning in the dogma. There's no meaning in living for an afterlife, because there is no afterlife. So, living for a purpose, living with meaning that is false, that is a fantasy, that is non-existent, it's not a meaningful life. It's a pretense for meaningful life. It's fake. It's pseudo. It's made up. It's a fantasy. I mean, God didn't die. God was always dead. The difference is that at some point, people came to realize there was never any God, and it all being a sham, and all fake. And a lot of people were sacrificed for some greater cause that didn't exist. A lot of people were sacrificed for some afterlife that wasn't there. A lot of people lived their life in great anticipation of an afterlife that isn't there, and wasted their time, wasted their lives, wasted the potential for meaning in their life for the sake of a fantasy, for the sake of something that wasn't real. And to some extent, the same is true of all the other kind of sources of meaning that people claim exists, in a traditional sense. National identity. Well, it doesn't exist. Not in any kind of meaningful sense. Sure, I'm an American. You're French. He's German. But it can't give you any meaning. It's just where you happen to be born or where you emigrated to. And you might be, pretty happy with where you live, and you might, be pretty happy that, or share a lot of values with the people around you. But that in and of itself cannot give you meaning. And when people try, just like with religion, when people try to gain meaning from their national identity, what happens? Well, a lot of people die. They're sacrificed for that nation. I mean, one of the things that gives a nation, provides meaning for people in nationalism, is war. The progressive thinker, was it something Crawley, in the late 19th century, early 20th century in the United States, often said that a nation needs war in order to muster the resources, the passion, give people meaning, give people a cause to unite around something. Indeed, Brooks, the New York Times writer, the neoconservative, or was a neoconservative writer, wrote just before 9/11, as it mattered. What was his first name? Brooks, something Brooks, famous kind of conservative. David Brooks, thank you. David Brooks wrote right before 9/11. He wrote, what American people need, what they need to unite us and to give purpose and meaning, is a war. Well, he got the war in 9/11. Don't think it helped with purpose and meaning. But a bunch of people died. A bunch of Americans died. I mean, he literally wrote that. It's one of those stunning pieces that you find and you go, really? He really said this right before 9/11? Now, I don't think he brought it about, but he got what he wished for, and I don't think it turned out the way he expected. Certainly didn't turn out well for America or Americans, and certainly didn't turn out well for the soldiers who landed up having to go fight for this war. Nationalism, when that becomes meaning, there is no meaning. You cannot gain meaning from a group. By absorbing yourself into a group, by becoming part of a tribe, by becoming part of a group, what you actually are doing is destroying meaning in your life, subverting meaning in your life. And I'm not against patriotism, but even patriotism is not going to give you meaning. Patriotism might be a consequence of the values you choose and of the meaning you ultimately find in your life or make in your life. But nationalism, the placing of the state above all as the source of meaning for your life, is going to lead to the sacrifice of a great number of people in some kind of war for the sake of the nation. Some people get meaning from, or claim to get meaning. They don't get meaning from religion. They don't get meaning from national identity. And some people think they get meaning from family structure. Again, family is very important and a beautiful thing. And important to pursue. It's a great value in life. But you think you're just going to get meaning from being in a family, getting married, having children. This is why people have midlife crises. This is why people feel like they haven't really done what they wanted to do in their life. They haven't really fulfilled their life because family is not enough. It might be an important element in a good life, but you're not going to get meaning from others, even your children. Not unless, well, you can't. They can be part of your meaning if, again, as we'll talk about, you find meaning, discover meaning, create meaning in the right kind of way. Community or whatever. It's all the same garbage. It's all wrong. And of course, religion, nationalism, community, and even family structure, when it's done for the sake of meaning, and when it's done, for the sake of tradition, or for the sake of this has to be, this is what you're supposed to be, this is what you're supposed to do. It's all external, and it's all basically dogma and authority, dictating what you should and shouldn't do, what your purpose should be. So you see this, you see secularization being blamed for loss of meaning. No. Secularization is the realization that true meaning, the only kind of meaning, real meaning, actual meaning, is to be found in this world. How you do that is still an open philosophical question we have to answer. But it has to be in this world. That secularization is just a recognition that the fantasy humanity lived under for thousands of years doesn't actually provide meaning. Nobody actually lives a better life by pursuing a fantasy, by pursuing an afterlife that doesn't exist, by pursuing a God that is not there. So secularization is just this waking up to the need for meaning and replacing dogma with real meaning. With real meaning. Other people might blame individuals. Individualism. Individualism, now you're all alone. And now you can't find meaning in the collective, in the group, in the tribe, in the nation, in the fill in the blank. That's right. Only individuals can find meaning. And they need to find it in themselves. Meaning cannot be a product of dogma. it cannot be a product of placing others above yourself. Meaning has to be a product of you placing yourself as the most important thing in the world for you. And therefore, figuring out what your values are for you. Now, that's hard. You know, releasing yourself from dogma and just following orders is challenging. But that's life. That is truly the meaning of life. It's to live as an individual. It's to live as a valuer. So, the conventional approaches to solving the meaning, the search for meaning problem, which exists today, because I think what's happening today is materially we're comfortable. More and more people are reaching the stage in life can ask the question, validly ask the question. What is life for? What is the meaning of all this? What should be my purpose? They're not struggling to survive as their ancestors were. They're now wealthy enough and educated enough, in a sense, that they can actually ask questions. They're actually in a position to ask those questions. And it's almost everybody's in a position to ask those questions. And unfortunately, the guidance they get from the world around them is horrible. It's horrible. I mean, Nietzsche is right in the sense that if people don't get an answer to the question, if they don't get an answer to a question they can embrace to find meaning, then many of them will lose interest in values broadly, and this is kind of the source of nihilism. The source of nihilism is the conclusion that, yeah, it's all meaningless. Nothing matters. What the hell? Values don't matter. I don't care about values. And it's a short step from there to become an active destroyer of values, particularly when you're young and want to do something, but you can't do something for the cause of something meaningful, for the cause of values, because you don't believe in values, because you've written them off. So in a secular world where you can't send the young men to go die for a false cause, nationalism, religion, go fight and die for that cause, those young men are likely to sit around and become nihilistic or just turn it all off. I think a lot of people just turn it off. Meaning they become cynics, but not quite as cynics enough to engage in nihilism. They just turn off the whole idea of meaning and purpose. They go and they live life, kind of the life that's expected of them. They get a job. They kind of like their job, but not super enthusiastic. They create a family and they're okay with the family and they live okay lives. And generally, they turn around and anytime they hear an ideal or value or something like that, they poo-poo it and they embrace the cynicism that you see so much. Some, and a growing number, embrace nihilism. And I think nihilism becomes more and more common and popular because it's hard to be nihilistic alone. I mean, suicide is probably the result of people who are lonely or nihilistic. It's much easier to be nihilistic in a group. And I think social media and communications generally, and online personalities can get people roused up around a kind of a nothing matters, let's go burn it all down kind of cause. And you see that. You see that with Fuentes and Carlson on the right, particularly Fuentes with young people, and you see that with the woke kind of attitudes on the left. It's basically just to burn things down, burn values down, destroy values. The whole agenda of egalitarianism as a ism is the destruction of values, of being able to differentiate good from bad, which is crucial to valuing. So you get a rise. So again, I think Nietzsche's right in that you get a rise in a real rise in nihilism as a consequence of people searching for values, searching for meaning, and not being provided with a false meaning, not being brainwashed into pursuing false meanings, but don't, as a consequence, but not being provided with any true meaning, so becoming cynical and rejecting everything and losing it all. And you're seeing that in young people today, particularly young men. Because in the past, I think for men, and again, you've heard me say this before, but for men, in the past, a lot of men got this sense of meaning. I don't think they got real meaning, but they got a pseudo meaning, a pretense of meaning, or at least it oriented, it focused their attention through a certain view of masculinity, a certain view of, creating a family and protecting the family and providing for the family that gave them some sense of satisfaction. I don't think it's meaning in a sense of what's available to human beings in our full potential, but it gives you something. And as that has gone away, as women have said, we don't need you to protect us, we don't need you to provide for us, men are a little adrift because that last piece of tradition, right? If religion, nationalism, but then family, and particular role in the family is part of the traditional source of meaning, goes away, or at least appears to go away, because women are basically saying, we don't need your traditional role. We might need something else, but that you have to discover, and that you have to earn. But the traditional role we don't need anymore because, hey, in a modern society where mind is valued instead of muscle, we can take care of ourselves. We can earn a living. We don't need you as much as we used to. Men are more adrift than ever. I mean, you see this, that much of this search for meaning is among what people call incels, guys that just don't want to have anything to do with women because they don't know how to do it, how to deal with them. They don't know how to relate to them. They don't know how to approach them, and they feel completely insecure in their presence. Nihilism is big there, again, because this last source of meaning coming out of tradition has been taken away from them, has been eliminated. So men more than women are adrift. I think women, maybe women are adrift too, but they express it differently, and maybe I just don't know how they're expressing it differently. I mean, partially it's their attraction maybe to kind of radical left nihilistic views. Women are attracted more to kind of nihilism of the left. Men seem to be more attracted to nihilism of the right. Nihilism of the right is more viewed as more muscular, more masculine, more action-oriented. Nihilism of the left is more emotional and intellectual, pseudo-intellectual. But both men and women. I mean, but the nihilism is there. But I think part of the reason women are less troubled by or less engaged in this conundrum around meaning is I think they find it. I think for women over the last 40 years, the fact that so many opportunities open up to them, the fact that they can go out there and have a career, live an interesting life as women of career, the fact that they can now materially take care of themselves, that's where they found meaning. They found meaning in work and career, and you know, also in family and the creation of family, but on their terms, rather than on terms that were dictated to them in the more distant past. So I think to a large extent, what we're seeing is a crisis among men more than anyone else. All right, so what is the solution to the crisis of meaning? And here I think it's important to note, I mean, people need a meaning. They need purpose. They need a reason to do stuff. They need a reason to live. Life requires an answer to why. And what for? And the crisis that we're seeing is not a psychological crisis. It's not a spiritual crisis in the sense of a crisis of religion. It's not a individualistic crisis in the sense of, oh God, when we had collectivism, wasn't life so much better? It wasn't. It's not a crisis of modernity or technology. It's a crisis of philosophy. Because philosophy is the field that has to answer these questions. What for? Why should I live? What's the purpose of life? And, you know, I think the people who ultimately, you know, escape this crisis of meaning, find meaning in their life because they, you know, even in spite of the bad philosophy that they're being taught, and maybe some of them read Ayn Rand, and maybe, you know, a lot of them don't, but because people found meaning before Ayn Rand, they embrace reason. They use reason to choose values. They recognize the centrality of their own life. And they choose to live flourishing lives. They recognize implicitly or explicitly, usually implicitly, that in a sense life is its own reward if you live it well. A good life is its own reward. A flourishing life, a successful life, being good at living, capital L, remember? Capital L, living, is its own reward. The reward is ultimately happiness. And the way to achieve the good life, I mean, at the end of the day, meaning, what is the meaning of life? The meaning of life is life. The meaning of life is living well. It's flourishing. It's to live with everything that entails for a human being. To live to your fullest capacity. A meaningful life is a purposeful life. A life of purpose. Everything that you do should have a purpose. The purpose is ultimately your happiness, your success, your well-being as a living entity. Your survival, but survival in the broadest sense possible, survival in the sense of success at living. And that means having a central purpose. And your central purpose that integrates it all, is that which makes your survival possible, which means your productive endeavors, your productive work. So recognizing the importance the primacy, not importance, the primacy of your life, recognizing that to pursue your life requires reason. This is Ayn Rand's great revolution, intellectual revolution. That pursuing that life requires reason. That reason is the tool by which you must choose values. Values, the things you act to gain or keep. Values, the things that you want rationally. That is, you want because they make your life meaningful. They add to your life. They make your life better. And among those values, the centrality of productive work, of a career. That is meaning. You know, in Jordan Peterson's terminology, taking responsibility, yes, it's taking responsibility to live the best damn life you can for yourself. You make your life meaningful by living a good life, by pursuing rational values, and by being a whole, integrated human being. A meaningful life is, at the end of the day, a purposeful life, a goal-directed life, a life connected to reality, to facts, a life that you have chosen. That you have chosen based on your personal values and based on your nature as a human being. So you get a sense of meaning when you live. You live consciously in pursuit of your goals, in pursuit of your values. If you're rational, and if you're reality-oriented, and if you're committed to the pursuit of values, you will have no crisis of meaning. You will have no mid-age crisis. I mean, you will constantly be rethinking your values and reevaluating them and judging them and evaluating them and to different stages in life, accommodating different stages of life. But the meaning of life is living. And as long as you're living in the full sense of the word, you're not going to suffer from a crisis of meaning. So to the extent that there's a crisis, it's a crisis of the rejection of reason, rejection of rationality. There's a crisis of meaning today because there's a rejection of individualism. And not just individualism, not primarily as a political identification, but a rejection of individualism as a moral foundation. I mean, altruism makes it impossible to have a life of meaning. You don't get meaning from sacrificing to others. You get meaning from self, and altruism tells you the self is unimportant. You get meaning from pursuing values, not from duty. Altruism teaches you that duty is what's important, not your happiness, not your values. Altruism makes you suspect productivity. Productivity is about pursuit of your values, your income, your wealth, your actions. And ambition. Ambition, which drives anybody who is serious about his career or productive endeavors. Ambition is selfish, after all. And altruism rejects ambition. I mean, meaning requires that your life matter to you, really matter. I'll say that again. Meaning requires that your life matter to you, really matter. So, the crisis of meaning is just a crisis of philosophy. It's a crisis of rejection of reason and a crisis of rejection of egoism. To embrace meaning is to embrace egoism. And to embrace reason is the only way to manifest that egoism. So we must, to solve the crisis of meaning in our world, we must rebuild reason, confidence in reason, reject altruism and embrace rational self-interest, choose a central purpose, an integrating purpose, career for most of us, and then pursue achievement and pride. Pursue pride. Pride is an action. Pride is not just something you feel. Pride is something you have to act. And then, surround yourself with the values that matter to you, with the people you love, with the work you're passionate about, with art that inspires you, with friends that excite you, that are real values to you. It goes back to Yaron's rules for life, love. Embrace love for everything that is meaningful to you. Your work, your partner, your friends, the art that you have. Surround yourself with beauty. Inspire yourself. All right, so that is my view on the crisis of meaning. The solution is not what almost every conventional thinker tells you it is. The solution is you, individualism, you really caring and taking responsibility for your own life and doing it rationally. And the crisis of meaning is the same crisis we have in every other aspect of the world in which we live. Again, its origin is the rejection of reason and rejection of rational self-interest or egoism. And therefore the solution has to be the embrace of egoism and reason. All right, cool. Let's see, where are we? All right, we've got about 15 minutes for the first hour. To remind you, again, we have goals for each hour of the show. We're about $67 short of our first hour goals. So please consider coming in with a question. You can ask a question about meaning, purpose, or you can ask a question about anything else. I'll answer any questions. So I'm gonna look quickly around of the questions to see if any of them relate to what we just talked about. And if you have a question that relates to what we just talked about, then jump in with the question because I'll answer those first. And then after that, I will go and do the reviews I promised you. I've got some reviews. So we've got Star Trek, Andor, and something on Elon Musk, which you might find interesting. All right. So let's see. No, that's not meaning. That's not a meaning. All right. So Ian says, have you read the article "Why Do So Many People Think Trump Is Good" by David Brooks? His diagnosis has to do with the crisis of meaning. His focus on authority and community is totally wrong, but it's interesting. I have not read it, but I'm not surprised. Again, Trump is a manifestation of the crisis of meaning in the sense that people, when they can't look to themselves to find meaning, they look outside themselves. And this is what, of course, people like Jordan Peterson have taught them to do. They look to join tribes. They look for authority figures to tell them what they should do and how they should behave. And I very much think that is the orientation of Trump supporters. This is a cool tribe to belong to. You share common goals and you share a common, passion around Trump, and there are groups where you can chat about this and talk about this, and you can yell at the people who disagree with you. I think people who are searching for meaning and can't find it are much more susceptible to tribalism, and again, Donald Trump is just a manifestation of a certain type of tribalism. And so, yes, I think that it doesn't surprise me. David Brooks is smart. I mean, wrong on pretty much everything he believes, and he's very, very much become a communitarian, much more than he used to be, and is quite wrong on the solution to the problem of meaning. But I do think that people find meaning in, in a sense, Trump has called them to a crusade. Drain the swamp, make America great again. These are all crusading kind of a purpose greater than yourself, which every politician tells you Trump has called you for something greater than yourself. And it's a pseudo meaning. It provides you with pseudo self-esteem. And of course, it's all fake because Trump doesn't care one iota about making America great again or about draining the swamp. He is the swamp, and his swamp animals are bigger than the previous swamp animals. But people believe that they're part of a crusade. And crusades don't provide meaning. They provide pseudo-meaning. They provide a pretense of meaning. They'll leave his supporters empty at the end of the day. They'll feel betrayed because they are being betrayed by the fact that they won't gain any meaning from this. As they discover that, the Trump is an empty vessel. There's no there. There's a long rant, I think today or yesterday, by Nick Fuentes to his people about how horrible Trump is, how much of a swamp animal Trump is, how he's betrayed everything they believe in, how he's not America first, Nick Fuentes is doing that because I think that's a lot of people are feeling that. It's become so obvious even they can't ignore it. And that'll lead them to become more cynical and even more nihilistic. It only plays into Nick Fuentes' hand, into his nihilism, the fact that even Trump couldn't live up to it. That's my interpretation. Again, religion is a source of fake meaning, and America First, or the tribe of Trump, or however you want to call it, is another source. MAGA is another source of fake meaning. They're not happy. Indeed, if you know people who support Trump, they're typically angry, very angry, and that is the main emotional driver. I'm going to read this in Shahbaz, even though it's not related. You missed my super chat at the end of yesterday's show, in which I explained what contrafibularities means. Now the world may never know. Hint: what's the most pointless book since How to Speak French was translated into French? Well, I actually have your super chat from yesterday, and I was going to read it. But I'm gonna start skipping your super chat, Shahbaz, if you come back the next day with a $50 reminder of the super chat that we had yesterday. So I'll just skip them and guarantee my $50. Shahbaz wrote yesterday that contrafibularities is the nonsense word that Blackadder invented in order to befuddle Dr. Johnson, after he claimed to have every English word in his dictionary. In one of the funniest episodes of any show ever made in human history, the dictionary episode of season 3 of Blackadder has to be one of the funniest things ever done. And one aspect of it is this confa whatever word that Blackadder invents in order to completely befuddle Dr. Johnson. If you've never seen Blackadder, you got to see Blackadder. It is truly, one of the funniest shows ever, and this is one of the funniest episodes ever. So thank you, Shazbot, for reminding me of that. I did not remember the word. Let's see. Yeah, Jennifer says, I've been out in the workforce for many years, and it still amazes me how good it makes me feel when I do something smart at work. Yeah. I mean, the reality is that we get most of our self-esteem from the things we produce. It's where we spend time. It's where we spend our productive effort. It's where we apply our minds and, our talents, our skills, our abilities. And when we achieve something, that's when we get a boost. Oh, yes, I can achieve. I am of this world, for this world. I can do stuff. So absolutely. All right. Right. Andrew says, what do you think causes the notion that many have that meaning is only to be found outside of work? Well, I mean, I think that's a direct consequence, a direct result of altruism, as so many things are, right? Work is fundamentally selfish. It's self-interested. Work is fulfilling. It's a requirement of your survival as an individual human being. And altruism demands that it's others. And this is why so many thinkers have tried to frame work in terms of other people. Even the Austrians tell you that you don't work for yourself. Capitalists or business owners actually work to serve their customers. And that the purpose of your work is service to your customers, which is complete nonsense. But it's a way for them to fit in their advocacy for capitalism with their altruism. And God forbid you work for yourself, for your own values, for your own purposes, for your own meaning. The Protestant work ethic is like you're working for God, in the service of God. So, they have to rationalize work some way because it's self-interested. And you can't get meaning from self-interest. Meaning is something that comes from outside of you. It comes from you doing duty, not pursuing your chosen values. All right, we've got a few other questions. We're going to keep those for after I do these reviews. So let's focus on the reviews now. You can keep asking questions. It's encouraged to ask questions. We're $40 short of our 1 hour goal, so keep asking questions so we can make that goal. You can also do stickers if you don't want to ask questions. That's great as well. Let me do, what am I doing? I don't want to do that. I want to do the opposite. I want to do this. All right, so I have a few things to review, and then we'll go back to answering questions. I was going to review Blackadder 2 episode beer, from drinking beer, but my wife wants to watch it as well, and we couldn't find a time where we were both going to watch it, so that Shazbot will have to wait until next week, but I promise next week we'll have Blackadder 2, Blackadder the episode on the beer, and I'll review that. That'll be fun. I don't think I think Blackadder is one of our favorite shows, so we'll watch it together. All right. Why is it doing that? That's weird. Just give me 1 second. I have to change something here. Page width. There we go. Okay. So the first one is a episode of Star Trek. Star Trek: The Next Generation. This is season 5, episode 21. It's called The Perfect Mate. The Perfect Mate. And this is an episode in which, in order to establish peace between two fighting factions who used to be united but fell out over a woman, they are now at war, and the Enterprise is involved in a ceremony that's going to establish a peace between them. One of the parties has they have a I guess ability to mutate women, to mutate to a point, to be empathetic, to read other people's emotions. And then they, in a sense, are conditioned, I think, by their genes to fulfill the desires of their mate, to fulfill the desires of the other side. Who asked for this? Shazbot asked. It wasn't Shazbot who asked for this. I'll tell you in a minute. Who asked for it? This was Evan. Evan asked for this. Evan Grass asked for this review. He had originally asked for a different review, The Measure of a Man, but somebody else had asked for Measure of a Man before him, so he shifted to The Perfect Mate. Anyway, I mean, it's a fascinating episode. So anyway, supposedly on this planet, men being born like this is pretty frequent, but a female being born with this capacity is very rare. This female, when she's born with this capacity, goes through a process because she's going to be, sex is going to be a big part of fulfilling the desires and wishes of the male. They go through a period in which they emit pheromones, and they become super desirable to a man, above and beyond the fact that they adjust. Everything they do is geared towards the man's, everything this woman does is geared towards the man's desires that she can sense. So it's, she's completely malleable. A new man comes in, she changes in order to become the ideal of this new man who's just entered into her life. And then at some point, a particular male is imprinted on her, and she only desires him and his and fulfillment of his wishes, passions, desires. And the idea is there's going to be this ceremony where this female, this woman, is going to be presented to the leader of one of the other warring group, and she's going to have him as the imprint, and she is then going to be the perfect mate for this other party, right? She's going to be their perfect mate because she will fulfill all the desires. She'll know exactly what he wants, when he wants them, and she'll, this is some male fantasy of the perfect woman. They can read emotions, and she's also incredibly knowledgeable. So very well educated, very knowledgeable, knows everything. And part of this is that she spends a lot of time with Picard, of course the captain of the Enterprise, before the ceremony happens, before she meets up with this leader of the other group. And he is, of course, very drawn to her because, she knows exactly what to say. She knows exactly when to say it. Also, again, she's releasing these pheromones, which enhance her desirability, I guess, towards him. But, she knows what he's interested in. So Picard is very intellectual. And therefore, she she can have a conversation with him about things that interest him, right? About the things that he is interested in, the things that he is passionate about. So it's not just physical, it's an intellectual attraction now. And he's constantly fighting this desire to sleep with her, the desire to make her his own, versus his responsibility as, as part of the, federation to see this peace treaty go through. She is, of course, obligated by duty not to be she doesn't have to be a virgin for this. So she could, and she's eager to sleep with Picard, and she's trying to seduce him constantly. But she is committed to ultimately having this relationship and becoming the permanent mate of this other planet's leader. And there's a sense in which there's very much this idea of duty. Her duty, she is duty bound, no matter what. And this particularly you get with the kind of ending of the episode. And the ending of the episode, it's the morning where she's going to go to the ceremony, and this new leader is going to be imprinted on her and become, in a sense, her mate for life. But something happens, and it's early, and what gets imprinted on her is not this other ruler, but what gets imprinted on her is Picard. And basically, and yet, even though Picard is now her soulmate for all intents and purposes, and she is in love with him, a true love, I guess, to the extent that something exists for a being like this, she now must, out of a complete sense of duty, go with the guy because if she'd been imprinted with this new guy, she would have loved him. But now she will never love him. She will always love Picard, and yet she is obligated by duty to fulfill this other guy's every whim and wish, every fantasy, every desire. So in many respects, this is incredibly tragic because, she will never be happy. She is doing what duty demands of her. She is being sacrificed, if you will, by her people. Yeah, that's the ending. She goes off with this other guy. That's the end. She's being sacrificed with other people. Picard, who is, you can imagine in a different context, would be, is in love with her. But of course, he's also realizing that it's very hard to draw a line on what's real and what's not, right? And the fact that she gets imprinted on something means she has no free will with regard to it. So it's very much this, fantastical kind of creature, if you will, a woman, but really without free will. It was interesting. It was fun to watch. It was interesting. It's definitely provocative. It's definitely a fantasy for, I guess, a lot of men who just want a woman I guess Matt Walsh would love a woman like this, right? A woman that will do everything that he wants, that has, in a sense, no values of her own. All her values. I mean, she's a creature of, it's not even altruism because it's not that this is a sacrifice, because to sacrifice, you have to sacrifice your own values, but she has no values of her own. Everything is the whole way in which she's built, biologically, I guess, is that her only value is to satisfy her male partner's desires. That's what she's built for. That's all she wants. So, incompatible with her own happiness because she's not, and incompatible with his happiness because he's not getting it, because she's not getting it out of a sense of her free will, but her duty, her automatic necessity. But the story is interesting. I mean, it's very enjoyable. I think a lot of Star Trek, certainly the original Star Trek, but I think also the following the Next Generation, are very philosophical. They create interesting situations, interesting circumstances. They don't always solve them and address them the way you would want them solved. But look, here it is ultimately presented as a tragedy. It's definitely a tragedy. So here she sacrifices everything for the goal of this peace treaty. Her life, Picard, whatever values she actually has. Again, they're not real values because they're not attained through free will. They're not attained through choice. They're attained, in a sense, automatically. All right, remind you, you get to set the topics that I'm going to be talking about in a little while once I finish these reviews by asking questions. So please consider doing a super chat and asking questions. Okay, so these are two from Shazbot that have to do with Andor. These are two clips on YouTube, and you can find there are these great clips on YouTube from Andor. Andor is a TV series on Disney Plus. It's in the Star Wars universe. But I actually think that of everything I've seen in Star Wars, and granted I haven't seen a lot, and I'm not a big fan of Star Wars, I think by far Andor is the best thing I've seen coming out of the Star Wars universe. It's the most intellectual. It's the best representation of kind of the fight for liberty and the fight for freedom, what it means. It also has a great concretization, representation of the way in which authoritarianism, the way in which it manipulates, the way in which it controls and takes over, and how the extent to which often it's the silence of good people, it's the passivity of good people that makes it possible for evil to be successful. But it's really focused on a hero, on a reluctant hero, on a man who doesn't want to be involved. This is exactly the kind of good guy who just lets things happen, who doesn't want to get involved. Who, it reminds me of kind of movies from a long time ago, which had always these kind of common man, reluctant heroes. They don't want to be involved. They're a little cynical. It's like Casablanca, in a sense, or To Have a Have Not, if you've never seen that, a Humphrey Bogart movie, which is excellent, To Have a Have Not. But then when they become heroes, they become real heroes because they know what they transition. They find the values for which it's worth fighting for. And everything then becomes oriented around the values. So it's really, really good. No, the hero is not Han Solo. The hero here is Andor, who's a much better, I think, hero than Han Solo is. So these are two scenes. The first one is from Andor episode 10, which is a scene in which the leader of the revolution, the leader of the people trying to undermine the empire, fighting against the empire, is confronted by one of its agents by, like, in a sense, what are you sacrificing for this? The leader of the revolution is this odd kind of relics dealer, antique dealer, if you will, who lives a seemingly pretty luxurious life, goes to big parties, interacts with all kinds of people. And he gives the spiel, 2 or 3 minutes long, about what he's given up to be the revolution leader. And it's very dramatic, very powerful. I think it's way too negative in many respects because he doesn't talk about what he's gained and what he's living for. But it's really, really powerful. What's he given up for the revolution? Everything, life. I mean, he knows he's going to die in the end. He knows he's going to be caught. He knows that's inevitable. But he's given up friendship and love and kind of every aspect of life. And what's he given it up for? He's given it up for a fight for freedom. And one of the things he says is really tortures him. is that he is condemned. He says he's condemned to use the tools of the enemy in order to defeat them. In other words, violence, deception, manipulation. And, you know, that makes it hard. And that's a theme that goes through Andor, is particularly this particular character. The extent to which he is like that. It's powerful. It's strong. It needed to have some positives in terms of, okay, so why are you doing it? If it's so bad, if you're sacrificing so much, if you're giving up so much, what's it for? What's the positive value? That is, I think, missing. Shazwat might correct me, but I think that's missing from it. But again, I highly recommend the show. It's really good. The second kind of scene is a scene. 1 second. It's a scene from episode 12 of Andor. It's a scene where, is it Andor's mother, or it's somebody related to Andor himself, who has been killed, but I guess taped a message before she died, and this message is now projected at a hologram in the middle of this planet, town, city that is being oppressed by the Empire. It's his mother, Shazbot says, his mother. And it's quite a beautiful scene. I mean, she makes this argument that we've been sleeping. We've let them take over. We've let this wound, which is the Empire, it fester in the middle, in the center of the galaxy. We've done nothing to fight it. She says the Empire is a disease. It thrives in the darkness. And it's in the dark because we refuse to shine a light on it. And we pretend that we can continue to live under the boot of the Empire. They go away and then they come and they go away. And when they go away, we think we're free, and we're not. We're still under their boot. She says, the dead have lifted me with their truth. And the truth ultimately is you have to fight. You have to fight the Empire. Because, your life can have no meaning. There's meaning again. Being under the boots of this oppressive force, of this, wound that it's not going to heal itself. The only way the galaxy, or whatever it is, can heal is if we shine a light on the Empire, and the only way to shine a light on the Empire is by fighting it. So really powerful, really good. In a sense, the combination of the two work well, because she is giving more of the reasons why we fight, why it's worth it, why you have to give up what you give up, what's the purpose of it. And that is healing. It's to live in freedom, to be able to live a good life, which is impossible under authoritarianism. All right, one more review. This one is from John, and it's, let me just see 1 second. Let me just make sure that I've got it right. This is from John Gloy, and who did a lot of the songs from last time. Anyway, this is a documentary kind of expose, a 40-minute expose that you can find on YouTube, called The Elon Musk Cheating Scandal. It starts off with talking about the fact that Elon Musk, I don't know if you know this, but Elon Musk claimed that he had been unbelievably successful on this video game called Path of Exile. And people really challenged him because it was clear that, when he played, he lacked basic fundamentals. He wasn't that good at it. And to get to kind of the level that he claimed he was at Path of Exile, you had to be really, really, really good. And to be really, really, really good, you have to devote huge amounts of time to these games. And Elon Musk is notoriously busy. So he didn't know how to play at the high level. He lacked basic skills. And people called him out on it. And it turned out that Musk was paying people to play the game for him. And then he took credit for their success. And he supposedly admitted to all of this. I remember when this broke. And it really made me think, God, I mean, if he needs to lie about success at a video game to create some kind of pseudo self-esteem, that is not good. That is not good and unbelievably weird, given he's the richest man in the world and has obviously been successful in so many other kinds of things. It's just strange. But it really indicates a lack of self-esteem. That a self-esteem is not automatic when you succeed at something. It requires you to recognize it, evaluate its significance, and it requires a moral code. It requires, self-esteem requires that you uphold a certain moral view. And here you've got one of the most productive people on the planet, not appreciating his productiveness, and not living up to the moral standards that life requires, and then getting caught lying about a video game in order to, what? Boost some pseudo, because he can't get self-esteem because he's lying. Now, and then when he was found out, he had a really childish response, but ultimately he admitted to it. Now, what this documentary really focuses on is another of Musk's lies, also related to video games. Musk, in several interviews, has claimed that he, a long time ago, was one of the world's best Quake players. Quake is a video game. Quake players. He claims that this was in the 90s. He's been making these claims supposedly for decades, that he was one of the best players in the world, that he was a part of a team that won a tournament, that was in a tournament, maybe the first semi-pro tournament in video games, and he won second prize, and that prize was thousands of dollars. Anyway, the documentary analyzes this claim and tries to figure out, is it true or is it not? And, at the end of the day, so he goes through, and it's kind of interesting how he figures it out, and you learn just a little bit about the whole gaming culture and these competitions and tournaments and stuff like that. But it turns out that Musk is half lying or half misremembering. I found this part not particularly interesting. I mean, Musk is clearly exaggerating. He was never one of the best players of the game. He probably did come in second in a pretty small and relatively insignificant tournament. The second prize was $750, not thousands of dollars. I don't know. This video makes a big deal out of this. Now, granted, Elon, in interview after interview after interview after interview, says the same thing. But, okay, so he's exaggerating. So it's clear that he wasn't one of the best players in the world. There were lots of other better players who just didn't participate in this tournament because it was a kind of a second-rate tournament. And the video goes into all of that. He might have come second, but he probably wasn't that good in spite of coming in second. One of the reasons he came in second was he had better internet connection, and the quality of the internet connection mattered in those days in that particular tournament. It didn't matter in other tournaments. They adjusted for internet speed. This one didn't. When asking the best player of Quake in the world at the time, he remembers playing against Musk, and he thinks Musk was not very good. So, to me, this one, it's weird that Musk keeps saying this. It's weird that so much of his self-esteem is tied up in this idea that he was a great video game player. But this seemed less than the first one. The first one, he just made something up boldly and literally had other people, he paid other people to play the game for him. I mean, that one was a con that he set up and ultimately had to admit to it because everybody saw through it. This one is like a, he kind of, you could easily think that he did come in second in this tournament. He might misremember the prize money. And he might not realize that there were much, much better players. I don't know. Or maybe he's just exaggerating, or maybe he's lying. He could be just plain old lying. So it was interesting. It tells you something about Elon Musk's character, which is not positive. What it tells you about his character is not positive. It says that he has this need to be. He's also claimed to be a top 20 Diablo player, another video game. Of course, if you followed Elon Musk over the last year, he lied constantly about Doge. He lied about how much money they would cut. He lied about particular cuts when they happened. He lied about what they could and couldn't do. I mean, he lied nonstop for about a month about Doge. And there it was obvious. So it looks like Trump. It looks like Trump. Lying Trump. Yeah, that would make sense that subconsciously I would say that. But it looks like Musk lies. Now, he can't be lying all the time. You couldn't build SpaceX, Tesla, and these other companies if you really were dishonest constantly. But there's a part of him that requires, affirmation. That I guess drives him towards lying about some of these things, and it ultimately is pretty sad and pathetic, really, for somebody as successful as he is to lie about things like this. So, but there you have it. It is what it is, and definitely sad. But the evidence is pretty strong that he lies about video games. And particularly given that we know he lied about Doge, I don't find it that surprising. It's not that shocking, ultimately. All right, that is the reviews for today. I still have, and if I haven't, I still have one of the short stories in Forks in the Road to review. I have Blackadder, the episode on beer. I have the movie Ford versus Ferrari, the 2024 biopic Better Man, Ride the Tiger book by Evola, which I've started reading. So, Ali, we're going to get to it by the end of the year. I will be reviewing Ride the Tiger by Evola by the end of the year. I don't know if Ali's listening or on now. And then we have a new one that was added by John Glue again, that is a song by Incubus called Drive. So we'll try that one as well. So that's what I've got left. Now, if I'm missing anything, please let me know. If you send me money to review something and I haven't, then tell me, and I'm happy to do it. So and of course you can do new reviews. It's $100 per song, $250 for an episode of a TV show, $500 for a movie, $500 plus for a book, particularly if it's a thin book. Yeah, those are the ones. All right. Let's jump to the questions. Again, you can ask me about anything, about the topic of today or anything else. And let's see. All right, Michael. Anka made a great point that racism is a form of automatic superiority. No matter how big of a loser you are, as an individual, you still have ranking over others automatically just from your biology. Yeah, absolutely. Onkar is always a great way to phrase these things, but it's a point Ayn Rand has made earlier on. I mean, you gain pseudo self-esteem from the achievements of other people. Right? I'm a Jew. Jews win lots of Nobel Prizes. I must be really good. No, there's no relationship between me and the people who won Nobel Prizes because we happen to be of the same, genetic lineage or something. No relations. I can gain no pride from their achievements. I can gain no benefits from their achievements. I mean, I get benefits from their achievements, qua achievements, not from the fact that they happen to belong to the same tribe I do a long time ago. And, so I think that people who are attracted to racist ideologies are people with low self-esteem. People are looking to gain self-esteem from the achievement of other people. And, Andrew says inferiority complex. Yeah, it comes from the low self-esteem, from inferiority complex about themselves, their individual identity. And therefore, they must look for others to give them a sense of any kind of sense of achievement, which they don't have. Thank you, Michael. By the way, we're in the second hour. We've got quite a bit to achieve the goal for the second hour. You can do a sticker, $2, $5, $10, $20 as a trade, value for value with me. So feel free to do that. You can also ask a question, of course, which is great. I love questions because then we get content. Michael, who asks lots of questions and contributes a lot to the show, both in content and in funding. You said yesterday that wealth doesn't make society more benevolent, as evident by America today. Freedom does. But the only way to create wealth is through freedom, and America is still the freest country on earth. Well, that's not really true, right? So Saudi Arabia is very rich, at least a subculture within Saudi Arabia. UAE and Qatar are very rich places. They're not free. They happen to be on top of oil, and therefore they are very rich from selling that oil. And I don't think they're particularly benevolent. So it's the freedom that makes you benevolent. So again, correlation, causation, it's a freedom that makes you benevolent. Yeah, it's the freedom for most places that makes you wealthy. And indeed, it's the freedom in the West, in a place like America, that makes the Saudis rich, because it's our freedom that has made us consumers of their oil. I'll also say this, maybe it's more than freedom. It's also individualism. That is the caring about the individual and his life. Because Europeans are free, relatively speaking. They're not particularly benevolent. And I think that has to do with the fact that they're much more inherently, they're much more culturally collectivistic. Collectivism breeds resentment towards the other because you're supposed to live for the other. Individualism, when you're living for yourself, is a benevolent ideology, and you know the other is living for himself, and you interact with them based on trade. It's mutual benefit, and if you don't want to interact with the other person, you don't. You just don't interact with them. So it's self-esteem and individualism and freedom that make you benevolent. Egoists are the most benevolent people. Andrew, I find Marxism-Christianity connection interesting in that Marxism is essentially a materialistic philosophy, yes. Rand said that materialism is mystical in that it denies consciousness. Is that relevant to Marxism? Yes, Marxism denies free will. It denies consciousness. We are automatons, basically being driven by historical necessity, by the necessity of our class, necessity of the genes, necessity of our economic circumstances. But individuals don't matter anyway, It's the class that matters, and the class interactions are determined by the necessity of history, which is all mysticism. It's all the negation of thought, of anything conceptual. It's the placing this force that is driving history as it's a completely mystical, irrational force. So in that sense, it's God that is driving this process. And think about it. I mean, according to Augustinian Christianity, you have no free will. You're predetermined to go to heaven or hell. Nothing you do in life really matters in terms of determining whether you go to heaven or hell. So it's all predetermined. God has predetermined everything because he's omniscient, omnipotent, and and so he's determined. Everything is determined. It's the same kind of mysticism. Marxism just replaced class and historical determinism for God. Andrew, yesterday I said I got righteously pissed at the YBS news show. You said fine, but hope it's not a primary value to get pissed. It isn't. Aside from entertainment, I use YBS to learn to be a better thinking person. I know I'm not alone. Thanks, Andrew. I appreciate that. And I had no doubt that was the primary. But I appreciate you saying it. I was more concerned about you going away from all my shows pissed and that being too big of a part of life. All right, Michael. If Nick Fuentes is so concerned with the next generation of Americans that they won't be white enough, why is he so anti-women in dating? Well, I think he's anti-women in dating because he can't handle women, because he lacks the rationality and the self-esteem and kind of the basic masculine traits to be able to deal with a woman. I think he has. He doesn't know how to deal with them. I don't think generally he knows how to deal with other people, certainly not women. I think they intimidate him, they scare him, he's afraid of them, and he also sees them as beneath him. He sees women as inferior. He has said this almost with disgust. Can you imagine me actually kissing and having sex with a woman? Disgusting. Inferior. Now, I don't think he's gay, but I think he's asexual in that sense. And of course, there's a sense in which Nick is he takes his Catholicism maybe seriously, maybe. And what does Catholicism teach us about sex? Sex is dirty. Sex is the source of original sin. The purpose of sex ultimately is procreation, but you have to go through this dirty thing in order to procreate. Nick, like monks in the past, just doesn't think it's worth it. He'd rather be celibate at this point. So I think he's putting his personal preferences above the benefits of the white race. Yeah. Let's see. Daniel, can you give the optimistic and pessimistic argument for Bitcoin and your take on where you think the truth lies? Well, I mean, the optimistic case of Bitcoin is that, God, I need to convince myself of this, right? To be able to articulate it. It's that at some point, people become so disabused, disgusted by fiat money that or maybe there's a financial crisis and fiat money collapses and fiat money loses its value and people are looking for a new medium of exchange, a new thing to use as money to replace it. And that the optimistic case is that at that point they turn to Bitcoin. Now, it's hard to imagine that happening. This is why it's a superly optimistic case. And to do that, Bitcoin would have to, its purchasing power would have to stabilize. And that would mean, so everybody would rush to Bitcoin in order to replace fiat money. That would drive its price way up. But at some point, it would stabilize. Demand for Bitcoin would stop, and it would start being used as the medium of exchange, the thing we use to buy stuff. And in order to become a medium of exchange, it would have to replace every dollar in circulation. And in order to replace every dollar in circulation, its price in dollar terms, but also in purchasing power terms, would have to go through the roof. Or think about it differently. There would have to be enough Bitcoins to make it possible to buy everything in existence. So it would have to go up in value dramatically. I think the calculation is, to do this, Bitcoin would have to be somewhere around, I don't know, somewhere between $1 to $3 million per Bitcoin. Probably closer to $3 in today's dollars. Right? Now, there are lots of reasons why that is unlikely to happen. There are lots of reasons why inherent in the structure of Bitcoin is volatility. And because there's volatility built into the structure of Bitcoin, basically because Bitcoin has a finite number of Bitcoins, you can never go over a certain number. But the demand for Bitcoin fluctuates. The supply doesn't change, can't adapt to the demand, and therefore it will always fluctuate in price. I think it makes it a less effective money. I think that if Satoshi had built Bitcoin with a mechanism, I guess nobody's figured out how to do this, with a mechanism by which the mining of Bitcoin becomes harder and harder at some point, but more Bitcoin is being mined at the rate of productivity increases. And maybe that could be related somehow to energy price, so that the supply of Bitcoin is infinite. But it can only be mined at a certain pace, a certain very determined pace, and that determination is linked somehow with productivity. That would make Bitcoin much more useful as money if it's going to become money. At some point, you're not mining any more Bitcoin. At some point, all the Bitcoins that exist. Bitcoin is capped at a certain number where there's no more beyond it. Right? So that's one of the flaws in Bitcoin. Now it depends on electricity and the existence of electricity. So it's not particularly good for kind of end of the world scenarios, for dark ages scenarios. You could have lots of competitors to Bitcoin. That is, there's absolutely, the only thing that sustains Bitcoin, if and when it becomes money, is that people use it as money. But, if people decide that there's some other coin, you could have multiple and many coins, and there's nothing inherent in Bitcoin that makes it better or unique as compared to other potential coins. And indeed, I think you could probably design a coin, a cryptocurrency, that is better at being money than Bitcoin. For example, this idea of not having a finite quantity. But anyway, that's optimistic. The optimistic is fiat currencies collapse, and people all jump on Bitcoin to replace fiat monies, and it becomes the global currency, the standard global currency. I can't remember how many. I think it's a long time before they're completely mined out, but of course it's going to be a long time before Bitcoin becomes money. So, because every year, 4 years, something like that. I think every 4 years, the quantity of Bitcoins to be mined a year is cut in half until it reaches zero. Bitcoin's not nothing. It's a particular combination of zeros and ones that can only be created in a certain way and can only be used in a certain way, and that is documented in a certain way. It's not nothing, it's something. It's just a question of, is it worth anything? But it's not nothingness. A computer program is not nothing. A combination of bits of a particular program is not nothing. Kubadaya says there are 1.5 million more to mine. Yep. Let's see. Oh, the pessimistic one is, yeah, I mean, I think that's even more straightforward. People realize that a Bitcoin is never going to become money, whether it's because governments will never allow it, central banks will never allow it, or because people are just not going to go for it. They'd rather have gold in their pocket than Bitcoin in their memory card, or there might be a cryptocurrency that arises that is just better than Bitcoin. There's absolutely no reason why the first has to be the best. And as a consequence, people sell it, and it collapses, and it goes to zero or close to zero in value. Of the two, I think the pessimistic is more likely. But I think the most likely is that it continues to be incredibly volatile, that people still buy it and sell it based on passion, and not really based on any kind of economic analysis. I don't know how you do the economic analysis. I mean, I have some ideas on how I would do the economic analysis, but I think it's very difficult to get a very high value for Bitcoin if you do any kind of meaningful economic analysis. So I'm more on the pessimistic side than the optimistic side, although I don't think it's just going to collapse to zero, because I think there are true believers out there who will keep it afloat. Michael says, while objectivism may not dominate in our lifetime, it is likely objectivism will be a household name in our lifetime. It will have a legitimate standing in people's psyche. I mean, I hope so. I think it's important for that. It's important that happen. But I don't know whose lifetime we're talking about, mine or yours. It's much more likely in yours, Michael, than in mine. My lifetime is not that long. Yours is many decades more than mine, I suspect. So yeah, I think in yours, that's very likely. Michael says, Nick Fuentes just went on Steven Crowder. Yeah, he's doing the rounds. We are watching mainstream conservatives shift into normalized Nazism. Well, yes, but he also, notice, if you watch him on Steven Crowder, he comes off very differently than when he does his own show. There's a really, really good video by Coleman Hughes on this, phenomena of Nick Fuentes presenting himself one way to kind of the popular podcasters and completely differently to his own audience and his own channel. But they're buying it. I mean, they're mainstreaming him. Somebody said Crowder made Tucker look like Ben Shapiro. Yeah, they're all treating him with kid gloves because they all want his audience. They all want his audience. And they all kind of vaguely agree with him. Michael, can anyone be a millionaire if they want it enough? I don't know if anyone. If you're in Down syndrome, probably not. If you have a very low intelligence, probably not. But yeah, I think most people with average intelligence can, if they want it enough, and they're willing to work for it, and they really invest the thinking that's required to get there. Yeah. The first millionaire in China was a guy who sold sunflower seeds and built like a network of sunflower seed sellers, and he had a special recipe that he came up with, and he that was the first millionaire in Chinese history, in modern Chinese history. Andrew, conservatives often claim that liberals make stuff up to be outraged about and are constantly enraged. But on conservatives, too, it makes sense that the facial expression of a tribalist is a snarl. Yeah, I think it's true of both sides. The dominating emotion they have is anger, and they're constantly looking for things to be angry about. They're constantly searching for outrage. They're constantly searching for things to be pissed off about. I think that's true of both sides. I don't think that's true. It's true of the emotionalism and irrationality of people, generally people out there. Daniel says, how disappointed are you didn't win the FIFA World Cup Peace Prize this year? I didn't know there was a FIFA World Cup Peace Prize. So I guess I'm not disappointed at all because I didn't even know it existed. You have to know something exists to be disappointed you didn't get it. I generally am not disappointed when I don't win prizes. Yeah. Jason, Washington State, stop HB 2100, proposed 5% excise tax on employers when they hire someone making $125,000 or more. God. That's insane. So that you want to drive out of the state high-paying jobs. We don't want high-paying jobs in the state of Washington. We want them to go other places. It's just insanity what the left does, to try to squeeze, producers for everything that they have, and they keep coming up with new creative ways to do it, and keep ignoring not only the immorality of it, but also the consequences of the action. Rafael from Portugal. Hi, Yaron. Many people today are secular, but still say they believe in something, like some vague spiritual element. So is God really dead? And how do you respond to this position? Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, in the United States, certainly God is not dead. I mean, 70% plus of the population, 70% claim to be religious, and another 15, 16% claim to be believe in something, as you say, and only 15% are atheist agnostics. In Europe, the numbers might be different, but it's still, so in America, God is not dead. God is still there. Organized religion might be dead, but even that, Americans are pretty organized. In Europe, the numbers are different. There's more. But yeah, I mean, I don't think God is dead, sadly. I wish he was. He should have died a long time ago, but he keeps coming back. And part of the reason he keeps coming back is because people like Jordan Peterson resurrect him, keep resurrecting him, keep bringing him back into people's lives. Now, this belief in something is, first of all, I think it's better than believing in religion and God, because a something doesn't provide you a dogma. Something leaves it open, at least for you to consider which values to pursue, to consider how to live your life. Now, mostly people who believe that fall into kind of patterns of conventionality. But again, I think that's better than belief in a religion institutionalized and then, but it's still mystical. It gives you no guidance. It prevents you from actually fully embracing reason, and therefore it prevents you from actually fully living your life. So that's how I respond to that position. It's crippling you. The belief in something cripples you because it leaves a whole realm of life where you won't let reason go, where you won't apply rationality. And that means the whole realms of life in which you cannot be successful. All right, guys. Thank you. Really appreciate it. Thanks for being here. I Won't have a show tomorrow. We're going to take tomorrow's show. We're going to take tomorrow off. Next Sunday, we'll do a members-only show. I'll let you know what the theme of that is, because you'll probably have to prepare. You'll probably have to read something in advance, but I'll let you know that during the week. So stay tuned. But I will see you guys on Monday. Monday, we've got 2 shows. We've got the regular show. I think it's a 2 p.m. East Coast time, the news show. And then we'll have an interview with Gene Maroney, one of your favorite guests, I think, with Gene an evening. So if you have any questions for Gene, then prepare them for Monday. So I will see you on Monday. Have a great rest of your weekend. Hope you enjoyed today's show, and create a meaningful life for yourself. Pursue values. Take your life seriously. Live with a capital L. Bye, everybody.